What is going on, guys, and welcome to my review of Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, the second film in this franchise and kind of the black sheep of this franchise, to be honest. Now, if you guys have not already caught up, I have both reviewed the Raiders of the Lost Ark as well as Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, completely spoiler-free review, so if you want to check those out, please check out this playlist up here. That'll get more filled out as I get through the next three films, and then by the end of this weekend, once all of you have had a chance to see Dial of Destiny, we're going to rank the franchise and get into my thoughts on all five of these films and how they stack up against each other. But for right now, we're talking about the sophomore effort. We're talking about the second film, a movie that, as a child, was always my favorite Indiana Jones film for a number of reasons. And it's only as I've gotten older, and especially once I got on the internet, started interacting with all of you more, that I realized that there's not as many fans of this movie as I always would have imagined that there was. And before Kingdom of the Crystal Skull came around, this was more often than not hailed as easily the weakest element of the Indiana Jones franchise. And even with the existence of Kingdom of Crystal Skull, and here recently with the existence of Dial of Destiny, I still see some people saying that this is easily the worst of this franchise. And to be honest with you, while I respect everybody's opinion, y'all are crazy. Every single time that I rewatch this franchise, especially as I've gotten into movie critique and everything here recently, I watch these films and I try my best to step outside of my nostalgia and to step outside of my childhood memories and try to watch all these films to see the movie that all of you that don't like Temple of Doom have tried to explain that it is, and try to see the weakest entry in this franchise, and try to see what is so wrong or missing from this film that the other films, namely Raiders of the Lost Ark and Last Crusade, have just done perfectly. And to this day, I don't see it. This is still the movie that I enjoy watching from this franchise the most.
Oh my God, is he nuts?
You know nuts. He's crazy.
But before I get into all of the reasons why I find this to be the most underrated entry in this franchise, while a voodoo cult and having the hearts ripped out of our chests is not necessarily a threat that we're worried about in our everyday life, identity theft absolutely is. So be sure to arm yourself with the protection of the sponsor of today's video, Aura. Nowadays, bigger and bigger parts of our lives are attached to online accounts and social media profiles, leaving us open to the threat of identity theft more than ever before. In fact, identity theft is the fastest growing crime in this country, with a new victim nearly every 14 seconds. And that's why I'm excited to partner with Aura today, which is an easy to use app that has every single tool that you will need to stay safe online. Identity theft protection, fraud monitoring, VPN, password management, and even antivirus software. And while I'm sure most of you watching probably have one or a few of those already in your arsenal, if you don't have every single one of them, it's like locking your doors at night and leaving all of the windows wide open. And with Aura, you'll even get near real-time notifications of credit inquiries if somebody's trying to open up a credit card or a personal loan using your information. The day that I activated my Aura account, I got over 50 notifications of my email address showing up on the dark web. That's a corner of the internet where hackers buy, sell, and trade your personal information. So let Aura do the heavy lifting to keep you safe online by using my exclusive link and getting a 14-day free trial. And you will be shocked at how much of your personal information they're going to protect in just those 14 days. So go to aura.com/Cody Leach or use this QR code to start your free trial of Aura today. And thank you to Aura for sponsoring today's video. Starting off with the positives for Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, it makes sense why this has always been my favorite entry and continues to be my favorite entry as an adult, because this is the most horror of any of the Indiana Jones films.
You shouldn't have buried me. I'm not dead.
This is easily the darkest, the most violent, the most terrifying, the most bleak and brutal of all of these films, to the point where the existence of this film, as well as Gremlins, released around the same time, actually spawned the creation of the PG-13 rating at the recommendation of Steven Spielberg, after a bunch of people took their kids and walked into a PG Indiana Jones of Temple of Doom and said, okay, dudes getting their hearts ripped out of their chests and thrown into a pit of lava and guys getting smashed under a rolling wheel, yeah, that's not quite family friendly, what the fuck? And to that I say nay, that is not a problem with the film, it's a problem with you raising some soft-ass kids. But in all seriousness, that is the element of this film that makes it stand out amongst the franchise. For those of us that love it, it makes it stand out as one of, if not our favorites. And for those that don't necessarily like their Indiana Jones or action-adventure movies to be quite that dark, it stands out as one of the entries that they're least interested in rewatching. But for me personally, it works at creating a more palpable sense of danger for our heroic characters, for Indiana Jones and Short Round and the really annoying chick that I'm going to get into in my negatives. Absolutely. I'm not defending her, don't worry. And the movie does a great job at slowly building up that really dark and evil threat of this voodoo cult that lives in the Temple of Doom. You have them crash land near this little village in India, and they see all the famine and the starvation and the missing children, and Indiana Jones sets off in this adventure, much like with Raiders of the Lost Ark, to where it's just about the fortune and the glory. It's just about finding these stones and seeking out this MacGuffin item that he can be famous for finding and sticking in a museum. And it's only after about the halfway point of this film to where the danger really ramps up and the mortality of these characters are challenged in many different ways. And he sees just the evil and the barbaric nature of these people that have stolen these children and continue sacrificing and murdering people, trying to gather these stones together for whatever the hell their world domination plot is about to be. It's only after he witnesses that true, scary version of evil that suddenly his motivations come in, and you get that character growth that I was missing a bit from Raiders of the Lost Ark, to where now the fortune and glory is not as important. Now it's about stopping these people, stopping this evil, liberating and saving all of these children, and in turn, saving this village. And so solely because of that much darker take that this movie goes on, the stakes feel higher, the overall goal and achievement that they're trying to get by the end of it feels like more of an achievement to me. It challenges the characters more, puts them in more of palpable danger, and just makes for a more exciting adventure and a more thrilling adventure for my own personal taste.
We are going to die!
And I actually appreciate the fact that this is the most focused and kind of the most small scale of any of these movies. It's not a globe-trotting adventure. They're not going to all these different tombs and archaeological digs trying to put pieces and clues together like most of the rest of this franchise. They just crash land into this really barbaric situation, and for the most part, the rest of the movie just takes place at this palace and then the temple underneath it. And so I actually like the fact that it's a little bit more focused, a little more small scale, and with this being canonically a prequel, this small scale adventure makes sense if you're going to do a film that takes place before the big globe-trotting adventure of Raiders of the Lost Ark. And I am an absolute sucker for Short Round.
Holy smoke! Crash landing!
Short Round, step on it.
Okie dokie, Dr. Jones, hold on to your potatoes!
I love that character. To me, he's the best, the most exciting, the most fun, my favorite sidekick of any of these films, and that's a tall order because there's a lot of great side characters that Indiana Jones has teamed with throughout this franchise, but what Ke Huy Quan brings to that character, as well as his character in Goonies back in the day, was just so charming, and I love his interaction with Harrison Ford to where it kind of grounds Indiana Jones a bit more, and it kind of continues to color out his character a bit more without overtly stating things about him, which I really liked. And especially in a film like this that is much darker and more intense and more bleak than previous and following adventures of Indiana Jones, I think that lighthearted element of bringing in a child sidekick of Short Round and their back and forth bickering really lightens up the movie in a necessary way to where it's not all bleak, it's not all dark and unforgiving. And the practical effects work in this movie to me is just as impressive, if not more impressive, than Raiders of the Lost Ark, because you realize these are real people doing real things. Like the minecart sequence especially is really thrilling, and how they were able to conceive that and shoot that and safely use these actors without putting them in danger of, getting wrecked by just falling off one of these carts is really impressive. There's a lot of really intense fight sequences involving voodoo dolls and gigantic dudes who's, fun fact, the same exact giant dude he fought in Raiders of the Lost Ark. And even sequences like the climax of the movie on that big rope bridge and people converging on Indiana Jones and then him taking them for a ride with the crocodiles down below. Like, you can see the very sensical way in which they shot that and just kind of threw dummies or threw clothes for these alligators to rip apart, but the way that they cut it and edit it together, it achieves that escapism to where you do feel like these characters are falling off this bridge to their death of just getting rolled by these alligators. And again, sense of danger, that sense of thrill that we get from having real people, real stunt workers, real fight scenes, real choreography, real alligators, compared to a lot of the movies today where most of that would be computer generated, and we know it's fake. And this, just like Raiders of the Lost Ark, is an extremely well-paced movie. A very exciting opening sequence that, again, shows a little bit more of that rascal side of Indiana Jones, a little bit more of that villainous flavor that he has that keeps him from being completely heroic, and then the escape of the plane, immediately landed in this village and stumbling upon this temple and all of the weird, wacky, crazy practical effects and everything they're going for with this dinner sequence that just introduces that nasty element and that little bit more horror element in there. And then as soon as they discover the Temple of Doom and go through that whole trap sequence of trying to find the temple, I mean, it's just a mile a minute from then on, where you're introduced to how horrific this situation is and how time critical Indiana Jones saving these people and stopping these horrific villains are. It just never takes a breath after that. It is a really thrilling movie that just never takes a break. And for my money, Mola Ram and his entire little group of thuggy cultists are the best villains of this franchise. To me, they're the scariest, they're the most intimidating, they're the most threatening, and just the way that they're introduced establishes all of that in one sequence, with his headdress that's so demonic and the way that they use the colors of red that's emanating out of what's supposed to be like a lava pit, and the chanting and the John Williams score behind it, and the practical effects of reaching into that dude's chest cavity and holding the pulsating heart while he descends into the fire and the heart starts to burn. Ah, Kanima! That's some terrifying shit. I mean, it didn't terrify me. I loved it. Even as a kid, I was like, that's fucking awesome. But that's some terrifying shit for normal people. I mean, who would you rather go against? The weird Nazi dude with the glasses and the fucked up coat hanger, or Mola Ram? I'll take the Nazi dude all day. And now as far as the negatives, because there are a couple of issues with this movie that even me, as a huge defender and fan of it, I can acknowledge and fully agree with. Number one is Kate Capshaw. This is the thing that the movie is known for having a significant drop in quality for, is the female love interest sidekick character. She can't hold a candle to any of the other sidekick characters in this franchise.
You can do it.
Feel inside.
You feel inside!
Do it now!
Okay!
Now, I will say, once you get through the first 30 minutes of the movie, I think her character gets a lot more tolerable because she's not quite as whiny and as expressive, and the movie focuses on a lot of the other elements of the film more than it does her. But that first third of this movie, first 20, 30 minutes especially, she's rough, because as we are getting introduced to the character and Indiana Jones is getting introduced to her, and she's kind of being forced into his situation, and they're being forced together, and especially once they land in India and they're getting introduced to all of the natural elements of that environment and the food and the bats and everything, it's just constant whining and screaming and complaining.
The biggest trouble with her is the noise.
And I could understand fully if that one element of this movie has dropped this from ever being people's favorite of this franchise, or just easily putting it underneath the first and third film just for that element alone. Totally understand that. That's the one criticism of this movie where I'm like, okay, I understand. I got you.
Oh, Indy.
Hey, lady, you call him Dr. Jones.
And even after she gets more tolerable as a character, I still never really got invested in her brewing romance with Indiana Jones. Now, Indiana Jones was, again, kind of created as a bit of a hodgepodge of certain things, one of which was the classic James Bond elements, that womanizer, that he's fucking a different chick in every single movie. And this was kind of carrying forward with that to where you never felt like there was any real future with these two. You never felt like there was an actual romance there. It was just like, okay, when are they gonna fuck? And the movie does have a fun sequence to where they're kind of having a battle of wills about, well, you're gonna come to my room. No, you're gonna come to my room. And Indiana Jones is getting choked out and comes in, and she thinks that he's trying to just take her right there. Like, he's looking for somebody, be gentle, be gentle. But aside from that one sequence that has a lot of fun with their brewing sexual tension, she's just not a character I ever really gave a fuck about. Like, she could have fully descended into that lava. I don't think anybody would have missed her. And I don't completely blame Kate Capshaw for that. Of course, that's how she was directed. That's what was in the script. You know, eventually she did marry Steven Spielberg, and I think they're still married to this day. So it's not like this is all on her, but just the character, whether it's the writing, the direction, the performance, a mix of all three, is just the least interesting and the most frustrating part of the viewing experience of Temple of Doom. And this movie certainly has arguably the least interesting MacGuffin item of the entire franchise. And I don't think it's a real negative on my experience. It's not like when we get to the Shankara stones, the wind is taken out of my sails, but it's certainly a missed opportunity. Could have been something a little bit cooler, more memorable, more visually exciting than just some rocks with scratches on them. When you have things like the Ark of the Covenant and the goblet with Jesus' blood in it and everything, like this just seems really weak in comparison. And while as a kid, I had a lot of fun with it, and again, it doesn't really tank my experience of this sequence. I still think it's a lot of fun. The whole let's escape a crashing plane with an inflatable raft and we're just going to land softly on a snow-covered mountain thing, that's arguably the most bullshit moment of this franchise. Like, everybody gives hell to the nuke the fridge moment, but we've never heard anybody say the escape the plane on the raft moment was where this franchise lost its way. And it's just funny to me that even as a huge defender of this movie, that moment is ridiculous, and not many people call it out for being that. But overall, guys, this is my favorite of the Indiana Jones films. If I was going to stick one of these films in my top films of all time, this is the one that's going to make it there. It's got all of the adventure and action that I want in an Indiana Jones film, and a little bit more of a character arc, a little bit more character growth with Indiana Jones, in my opinion, while also having all those darker, more bleak and fucked up horror elements that admittedly, I just get a lot more out of those types of movies, and I get a little bit more excitement and thrills out of those types of threats. So for my money, despite its very glaring issues, the overall package, this one is my favorite of the franchise. Well, that's it for this one, guys. If you enjoyed that, please click over here to check out my 2023 new release reviews, as well as my playlist so far of all the movies I have reviewed in this franchise, which up to this point would be the first two, as well as Dial of Destiny. If you're watching it in the future, they should all 5 be in there. Please like and share this video, hit that subscribe button, be sure to check out Aura down in the video description and protect yourself from identity theft. And as always, remember, opinions are like assholes, but that doesn't mean you have to be.